Hello there. Today we're talking about these Britain's details British Army soldiers. Now the reason why I'm doing these today is because in my last video I covered the Americans and the German soldiers, which were released first. They were released in 1971. These guys had to wait until 1973 to join the fight, which is a little bit around the other way. It should have really been the Germans first, obviously, because
you started it?
We did not start it.
Yes, you did. You invaded Poland.
And then it should have been the British soldiers. And then 2 years later, it should have been the Americans, to follow historical fact. Also, in 1973, Britons decided to release some Japanese soldiers, which, as you can see here by this photo, there was only one ever set of these guys, and they came with an American weapon, the recoilless rifle, which is a bit strange. Maybe they captured it on the battlefield in the last days of the war. Anywho, back to the British soldiers that we are looking at today. And aren't they pretty, folks? So what we're going to do is we will get into this thing right now. Okay, so let's start with these guys then. Here we have kneeling down shooting Lee Enfield rifles. Now, the one on the left here, he's my original one. You can tell because the barrel was broken off of his gun. That's going to be a reoccurring feature in this video. Let's see if you can spot further childhood figures of mine with broken guns. So the guy on the right here, I recently purchased as a sort of replacement. This guy was no longer reliable in battle, so we needed someone with a complete gun to make sure that the enemy kept their heads down. Very nice figure. There we go. Now, as I said, there was 2 releases of British figures, and I don't know off the top of my head which ones came with the first release or the second release. And unlike the Americans, I don't think there's any British soldiers that are all in one mold. They all have, as you can see here, the second arm is a second mold. With the American soldiers, the second release were all one blob of plastic. Anyway, going on to these guys, well, the officers, these do look like that they were all probably one mold, but then, you know, they're just in a fixed pose. Which one is my childhood toy? Well, it's this one, isn't it? Because his gun's broken and his lanyard's broken. Terribly bad show, old chap. Yes, sorry. Got a little bit damaged by the enemy. Why don't you go and stand over there and I'll carry on with the demonstration. Okay, old chap. So, here we have our officer. I'm not sure if he's a lieutenant or a captain or a major. Quite like the idea of him being a captain. Not sure why. I do like his binoculars. Not sure why. Now, the British had an officer that came with a gun. The Americans, I don't think, had an officer. And the Germans, they had an officer that came with a map and a pointy finger. Hello there. I will be taking you prisoner now. Sorry, old boy, but I have the gun, you see. Yes, but I am having the map. Yes, but once again, old chap, I'll draw your attention to the gun that's in your face. Yes, but I have the pointy finger. Once again, I have a gun. On the map? No, don't really care about the map. I know where I am, and I know I'm here with the gun in your face. Well, I guess I am your prisoner then. Yes, you're bloody right you are. Now, turn around, off we go. Bye-bye. And end scene.
Don't stand there, Gorpin! Like you've never seen the hand of God before!
So, there we go. That's our officers. Now, here we have Tommy gun throwing hand grenade. Well, not Tommy gun. Holding a Tommy gun and throwing a hand grenade. Now, can you guess which one's my childhood one? This one's broken, so it must be this one then. So we'll put him back over here and we'll take a look at this one. This one was gifted to me by Jason over at Travels and More with Jason. And as you can see, he has a full Tommy gun and a grenade. But he's also been given a blackwash detailed finish. Now, I'm not sure if this was actually from the factory like this. I do know with the Japanese figures, Britain's released, I think the first release of Japanese figures had a blackwash just to bring out a bit of extra detail on them, but it turned out to be too expensive, so they stopped that after a while. But I don't know if they ever did it with the British soldiers, so do let me know in the comments below if you know better than me, which is probable because I didn't really do much research. Shh, don't tell anyone. Anyway, so here we go. Here's a lovely little figure all ready to throw that grenade. Hope he hurries up, otherwise it will explode in his hand. Pop him over there. Now, here we have our Bren gunner. I really like this figure. This is one of my favorites. Actually, this is a childhood one, and the gun is not broken. So, I don't know, did I not play with it so much, or was I just extra careful with it because it was my favorite? I'm not sure. Now, what was better, the Bren gun? Or the MG42? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm going to go for Bren gun because it had a slower rate of fire. It was probably more accurate because of that, and you didn't have to change the barrel every 2 seconds. Right, then we have standing, firing the sorry, I'll say that again. Standing, firing the Enfield rifle. Pretty cool. Bayonet there, ready. And then, speaking of bayonets, we have running, charging with bayonet on rifle. Rifle's a bit bent. That is a recurring theme also with Britain's figures. Their weapons tend to bend. And even though I heated this up last week, actually, I put this in some hot water, straightened it up, and cooled it down very quickly with cold water. It kept its shape for a few days and has gone back to being slightly bent. But that's all right. It means you can just stab people around corners. Grr. Right. So there we go. That's my Britain's British soldiers that I have.
The sings George Formby. What can I do? I've got to do.
Right, stop that. Silly. And a bit suspect, I think.
Now, there were, as I say, 2 sets of these soldiers, and I don't know out of my head which ones came with which set, but I'm always on the lookout for some more recruits to my little Britain's army. So whenever I see them, I buy them, but I only buy them when I see them loose. I'm not really hunting them down. And it's quite nice to see them in a shop sometimes and pick them up in a charity shop or something for a few pounds. So that's that. Also, there was a 2-man submarine that I used to have. And I'm pretty sure there used to be a boat as well with a Bren gunner and an officer steering the boat. And I'm sure I had that. I either had that or I had the lifeboat. But the lifeboat wouldn't fit with anything that I had. So, yeah, I must have had it. I have a vague memory of playing with it in the bath, and I have absolutely no idea at all what happened to that boat or that submarine. And that submarine's quite expensive now if you wanted to buy it on the second-hand market. So I'm not sure if I'm ever going to get one, but I am on the lookout for one. Also, Britain's made some play sets which are pretty cool. some broken down villages or cities, buildings, I guess. I used to have the farmyard playset, which would always be taken over by the Germans or taken over by the British and had to be liberated by one of the other sides, or the Americans would come in. You know, imagination, people, imagination. Or I'd build my own broken down villages and cities and things out of Lego, and the guys would go through that. That used to be quite fun. So anyway, there you go. That's me reminiscing about playing with the Britain's toys. Now, let's have a look at what armour and vehicles I have. Okay, so this is our one piece of British artillery that I have, and for a long time I thought that this was a 17-pounder anti-tank gun, and it does look quite a lot like a 17-pounder, only with closer inspection we see we have here two sort of like eyes on the front for towing the thing by the front. We have the back of the gun here sort of flares out, which means that this is not a 17-pounder. This is what's called a BAT, a BAT, and that's a battalion anti-tank, and that is a recoilless weapon. So they managed to get rid of all the extra springs and suppression things that they needed for the 17-pounder to stop the recoil so much. And by using the gases of the shells that would fire out backwards, you could then make this as a recoilless weapon. And then it was much lighter. You didn't need so much stuff. But it wasn't developed until the 1950s, I think. So these guys wouldn't have been around to use it, really. Or it wouldn't have been around to be used in the Second World War. They would later remove the armour to make it a little bit lighter. And then you'd have what was called the Mobat, that was mobile. And then they went on to make one of magnesium, so it was even lighter, and that was then called the Wombat, Weapon of Magnesium Battalion Anti-Tank. So there you go, a little bit of history about artillery. But let's have a better look at this gun itself. So we have here a little spring-loaded clip. Let's just call it a clip for can't think of any better word. And then we can elevate the gun or de-elevate the gun, elevate, de-elevate, which is pretty cool. We have a loading mechanism, which is just a spring-loaded mechanism. Now this is slightly more substantial than the 25-pounder, which I have. I do have a 25-pounder here. For some strange reason, this would have been a British field artillery in the Second World War with these guys.
Fire!
But this is more for the Americans, apparently. Now this suffers from a defect that this can split open, the barrel can split open, all the spring falls out, and the whole thing gets demolished. So I'm not actually going to fire it. I'm going to remove the tension from it because I don't want to break it. I do already have a broken one of these, and whilst filming for the American Britons, I actually broke this and then spent an hour putting it all back together again. We are not going down that road again. So I'm going to put this to one side. This one is a bit more substantially built. It has pretty much the same firing mechanism. There's a tiny little spring in there. I'm not sure if that's showing up on the camera or not. And then we have here one of the plastic rounds. Most of these were lost in the 1970s and 1980s, especially in the high pile shag carpets of the time. And we loaded a bit so it's just hanging out a bit, and then we fire it at something. 1, 2, 3, and there we go. Isn't that amazing? Let's see if I can do that again. And then maybe we can put it in a slow motion. So there we go, we loaded again. It's just hanging over just a little bit at the back. Let's tilt it this way a bit. 1, 2, oh, hold it at the back. So 1, 2, 3, plop. There we go. It does have quite a good action. I want to fire it again now. sorry about this. I don't know if this is getting boring, but I'm having fun, and that's the main thing about making videos, is I want to have fun. Fire! Anyway, so there you go, the BAT. Now, here we have the British military support Land Rover. Now, obviously, Land Rover wasn't around in the Second World War. It was, I believe, developed in 1948, although the idea did come from the Willys Jeep. So, well, whatever. And with a bit of imagination, you can pretend that this was around in the Second World War. But this version is a Defender. You can tell by the front here. The front's very different to what would have been a Mark 1, 2 or 3 Land Rover. They would have been like this. This is from the Britain's Farmyard sets. Although the idea, I guess, was pretty much the same by Britons. And I do believe that they did make a Mark 1, 2 or 3 Land Rover for the military line as well. The number plate is almost the same. BTN, well, this one's 90 and this one's 70. So that's interesting. I don't know if military vehicles do have license plates. I guess they do. I guess they have to drive on the British roads sometimes. Also interesting, this one has a windscreen and this one doesn't. There you go. Put that away. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this.
Land Rovers, Mudlarks would be a far better name for this distant relative of the sedate family car.
Now, you might see that the gunner is not the right gunner on here. In fact, this is a standard Britain's figure with a plastic stand. We take that away, you can just see Britain's Limited. Now, the reason why I have him on the back and not the correct gunner, there should be a Bren gunner on the top, is because for a long time I only had the gunner and I didn't have the Land Rover, and I thought that a Land Rover had been lost to the sands of time. So what do you do with just the gunner? And obviously you just throw him away.
What?
So I threw the gunner away like an absolute idiot that I am. Don't have to put it down in the comments. I know I'm a bloody idiot. And then obviously about a month later, I found the sodding Jeep, didn't I? So then I have the Land Rover and I don't have the gunner. And a loose gunner is extremely difficult to find. But I did have this guy and he sort of fits on the top. And he probably has a better uniform for the time period that this came out, that this Land Rover would have been around, than the guy actually driving it, who seems to be in Second World War khaki, British khaki uniform. So wouldn't have been around for this guy, but would have been around for these guys. Now this is a Britain's Super Detail. And then the Super Detail figures, they had a mix of plastic. So you can see there, he has sort of like a mottled colour uniform on with the greens, the browns. And that meant that in one moulding, they could have all different coloured uniforms on. And they became the Britain's Super Detail. Now, you have, this guy's a para, red cap. And you have Commandos, they have green caps, and you have SAS, and they have a grey cap, and they all had different colour bases as well. The Commandos have grey bases, and I believe the SAS have a lighter grey, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't have any. But then the video is not about this guy, so he can bugger off now. Now, let's have a look at the Land Rover again. Now, I believe this is a later version Land Rover, because I think the original ones would have had green wheels or darker wheels. But having said that, this one is obviously an earlier version, and this one has white wheels, the same plastic as the base. The subframe is completely the same. So it's only the shell that's different. So all the suspension is exactly the same as the original one. The suspension is pretty good on this. and it does roll fairly well. So what we're going to do is see how it rolls compared to what the Germans and the Americans have. So here we have all three of the vehicles. I think the Americans are going to win because even on the turny table thing, it wants to run away and escape. No, it doesn't want to run away and escape. It wants to drive into battle and be very valiant. Whereas the British Land Rover is also going to join its American friends in battle. The German one doesn't want to move at all. Maybe because it's in the center. Let's put it also off to the side and see how... Well, oh dear. They drove backwards. Now, that was just silliness. Let's actually see how they roll. So, let's start with the British Land Rover at the back. Okay. The German Kübelwagen. And the American Willys Jeep. We have a winner, ladies and gentlemen. We have a winner. Oh, this one, the Willys Jeep is my favorite anyway. It's just, this is really fantastic. This one looks fantastic. No suspension. Rolls okay, but the Germans couldn't afford any suspension. And this one obviously does have suspension, but doesn't roll amazingly well. Original. This is quite an old version, old one that I got secondhand, so I don't even know why I put that in the comparison. And with that, we have come to the end of this wondrous video. Now, make sure you let me know in the comments what you think about the Britain's toy soldiers. Let me know if you've been collecting them. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you share the video with fellow Britain's enthusiasts. And if you're not already subscribed, subscribe. And also, you should check out this video here, because this one is about the Germans and the Americans. Now, thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one.
Deutschland, Deutschland, jubelt.